Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Hood Independent Podcast. Haven't been on in a couple of months, and that's been intentionally because I've been trying to change up the format a little bit. Also, there's been a lot of things going on. I want to wait till we got through that season and then come back on the air and be able to talk about it. So tonight, I'm going to start. Everything is intentional, even the way I am dressed right now. I have on a referee or umpire shirt. And if it's on the football field, then is the referee and the black hat. So I'm wearing that intentionally. And what that signifies is independent. So look at it like this. If we were playing a football game or a basketball game, and in both of those sports, you have a referee or an official. And so that's what this signifies. So you got Team A and Team B, and I am the referee. Now, I'm not concerned about Team A or Team B or who wins at all. I'm just here to call balls and strikes. I'm here to call in a basketball scenario. If you too aggressive in guarding someone and put your hands on them, it's called a foul. If we're in a football analogy and you go before the ball is hiked or tackle someone after they're already down, unnecessary roughness. The first one I mentioned would be offsides, or if the clock runs out before you hike the ball, it's a penalty. And in each one of those scenarios, like I said, to me, the outcome doesn't matter who wins. But when those things happen in a football scenario, if you're offside, the penalty happens, then the referee takes the flag and he throws the flag, calling the penalty. And so that's the analogy I want to use going into this. It's a sports analogy, and I am just the referee. I do not take sides. So with that, having said that, I'm also starting what's called MICA. It's an acronym, M.I.C.C, and it stands for Modern Independent Conservative Coalition. And so I say that because I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. See, so many times they want to force you into one camp or the other. And then as soon as you begin to speak to someone on issues or topics of the day, depending on what you say, they already pigeonholed you that, oh, you must be this or you must be that. We've entered into a climate or atmosphere now. People no longer have dialogues or debates about anything that's going on. They have their belief about one thing and that's it, and they're not willing to discuss it, and surely are closed-minded and not thinking about pursuing any other options or any other opinions to anything. And that's not good, and it's not healthy, being closed-minded no matter what we're talking about. If it's politics or anything else, we should be open-minded. As a matter of fact, the Bible says that a wise man or a wise woman will listen. You don't have to agree, but at least be willing to listen. So now we've entered to this culture that people no longer want to listen. They don't like what you say, if you don't agree with them, they have this thing called cancel culture, and they want to shut you down. They don't want to hear anything that you say, no dialogue. In fact, they're sent out on a path of destruction to destroy you, not only your opinion and your idea, but destroy your life, to destroy your business, to destroy your reputation. That's the culture that we've in no longer. So they want to have personal attacks when they can't discuss the issues in a meaningful and educational way. So they attack you personally. They attack your name. They attack your character. They attack other things when they can't hold a debate or a dialogue on whatever the conversation might be talking about. So again, that's why I'm wearing the referee shirt. I am independent. I am neither Democrat nor Republican. I'm a critical thinker, meaning I think for myself. I look at a situation, assess it, evaluate it, contemplate it, and come out with a reasonable thought or conclusion at the end of the process. And to be quite honestly, that's what we all should be. We should not be triggered by someone telling you, you ought to do this, or they're saying that, or they're trying to do this to you. That's being triggered instead of doing your own research and investigating and coming to a conclusion for yourself. It don't matter who's telling you. It doesn't matter if it's me or if it's someone else, a complete stranger, or a coalition. And so, again, I'm neutral. And if something is right, I'll say it's right. But if something is wrong, I'm going to throw the flag. So, having said that, I want to introduce two documents because one of the things I do, I spend a lot of time reading and I spend a lot of time researching, and I gather information from all sources. For example, like I said, if we're talking about, it could be about anything. Let's say the issue could be about Donald Trump. He's in the news. Everybody's talking one way or another about it. So you have an opinion. CNN is saying one thing, and then Fox News may be saying another thing. So based on what you say, they're like, oh, you've been listening to CNN. Or they'll say, oh, you listen to Fox News. That shouldn't matter, and it doesn't matter. All of them are informational sources. You should have the understanding and the intellect to look at a situation and information and evaluate it for yourself and come to your own conclusion, again, rather than trying to shut someone down or cancel somebody because you don't like what they're saying. And that's what happens in most of the cases. So modern, independent, conservative coalition is a coalition that I've started out. I've always had it in my mind and in my heart to do since 2020. Some of you may know I ran for county commissioner on two separate occasions. And the hard thing is getting a platform, getting someone to allow you to speak publicly to the masses or to the community or to the voters. And so you're struggling just to get your name and your reputation and your platform out to the people so they'll know what you stand for. And that's another thing I will add. People, when they ran for public office, they used to have a platform and tell you what they stand for, what they believe in, and what they don't believe in. That doesn't even happen anymore. Now, I am going to say some things that are factual because I don't go about opinion. I try to go what I know in the way of facts. Toledo, Lucas County is dominated by Democrats from top to bottom. Everything from the county commissioner to the mayor of the city of Toledo to dog catcher. It's all ran by Democrats. So whenever there's an issue in Lucas County or the city of Toledo, it's because some Democrat did not do what they were supposed to. And so when you bring that up, they'll say, oh yeah, but I can't be no Republican. But the truth of the matter, if you're open-minded and you're looking at doing things a different way, but through a different lens, you can't say what a Republican will do or won't do because they've never had the opportunity to do it. And so when you say stuff like that, that's speculation. The fact is, this place is ran by Democrats and has been for the last 50 plus years. So anything that's happening in it, it is the Democratic Party fault. That's just fact. You don't have to accept it. You don't want to believe it, but it still don't change the fact. So those are the type of things that I am speaking about again. So going back to, like I said, the whole reason why I created this platform is the first place that I can speak freely, not being misinterpreted, misquoted, manipulated, or any of those things. Sound bites, you can go on a certain thing, say a certain sound bite on the airwaves, or have something printed in print, and they'll take out some of the things that you said, telling a half truth, and it comes out a whole nother way other than what you said or what was intended. And so I created this podcast independently, and it's been that from the beginning, and so is the coalition. that I'm starting up. It's independent as well, and it challenges people to think for themselves and not be told what to think and not be triggered by different incidents. These people are expert at what they do, and they know what works and what don't work, just like a TV commercial. People pay millions of dollars to have a TV commercial put on during the Super Bowl. They'll pay 5, 10, $20 million to have a 30-minute second commercial on the Super Bowl because they know you got millions of people watching it. And once those people see that commercial, it triggers them. It's stuck in their head. And so they know what's working. Even though they may spend $20 million to advertise mainly beer commercials, beer sales go up exponentially as a result of that $20 million they spend for the advertising. It may wind up netting them $200 million by year's end. So people wouldn't spend money like that if they know advertising was not effective. It's the same thing with campaign and elections. People see stuff in the Toledo Blade or 11, 13, or 24 News, all local, and take it as the gospel. They said it on there, so it must be true. Well, no, it doesn't have to be true. Again, you're being indoctrinated, you're being triggered, you're being led to come to a certain conclusion based on the information that's been presented to you. They never tell you the whole story. They only give you the narrative that they want you to have to send you in a direction to come out with a desired outcome, and it's generally their viewpoint. And so again, that's why I started this platform where no one can come in and interrupt what is happening with the Hood Independent Podcast. So what I want to talk about, I have 2 books here that I read. I do a lot of research. I have a library of books. I have some books that are brand new that I haven't even read yet. So when I have conversations or if people choose to, debates, if it comes to that, my conclusions are based on facts and not opinions and not feelings and not emotions. That's what you are. You're triggered when you're emotionally involved with a situation that's not based on facts. And so here's the first book. The book is called Erased, and it's written by a pastor out of North Carolina. His name is John Amachuku. And so he wrote this book earlier in the year. It may have even been earlier this year or last year. And he's going all around the country, is promoting this book and talking about it. And so what it says is uncovering the lies of critical race theory and abortion. Some of you probably still haven't heard of critical race theory. I posed that to some people just a couple years ago. They had no idea what I was talking about, but they formed an opinion on it based on whatever information they've received over the past couple of years. I heard about the critical race theory 3 or 4 years ago. And so the thing that got me talking about this book on the independent level, once again, is that this pastor, African-American pastor that is on the back, is basically saying that, well, first, let me just read a couple of quotes. It says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil." You believers should understand that. That's out of the Bible, out of the book of Isaiah, chapter 5 and verse 20. "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness." And so what he talks about, I'm going to keep on reading. In Erased, John Amachuku dispels the myth surrounding abortion and critical race theory and uncover the left's sinister plot to destroy the Black community and divide the church. Just in case you didn't hear me, I'm going to read it again. He says, to dispel the myth surrounding abortion, which is a hot button issue in the state of Ohio. I'm going to come back to that. And critical race theory uncovers the lefts, they call them left. On the left, you're either a liberal or a Democrat. On the right, they call you a Republican. So we're talking about the left. He said the left's sinister plot to destroy the Black community and divide the church. And see, this is happening. And this gentleman wrote the book, is a pastor. And so he's doing the same similar thing that I'm doing. I'm trying to educate Black people, African American people to the truth and the knowledge of the truth as I've researched it. And it's not based on opinion, it's based on facts. And so the reason I speak out about this self-destruction is happening, and people are playing a part in their own demise, in their own destruction, and think they're doing something meaningful. Woe to the people that call evil good and good evil. And so that's what he talks about. So critical race theory, and this is the terminology you probably haven't heard, but you're going to hear more of it. And you need to do your own due diligence. You need to do your own research. You don't have to believe anything that I say. You can research it yourself, and after you come to that conclusion, then you'll see that I've done my homework as well. So critical race theory is a Marxist ideology. You have communism, socialism, and Marxism, and they're all different versions of one another. And out of each one of them, socialism, communism, Marxism, it comes out of basically the Russian ideology after Karl Marx. And Karl Marx and all of those isms, socialism, communism, Marxism, they don't believe in God. That's the first thing. They believe communism, socialism, and Marxism is God. God is a representative of the government, of the state, of the who runs the country, the government. And so they believe that government is God, not the God that I believe in. I want to say that you believe in, but I don't know what God you believe in. The God I believe in, Jesus Christ, is the one and only true God. But they don't believe that. And so their plan, again, through critical race theory, is to destroy the African American community. Okay, how are they going to do that? I'm glad you asked. So there's this thing going on now that they want to separate the races. Over the past several years, they have now on a lot of college campuses, and they're also liberal colleges, liberal arts, left-leaning, controlled by Democrats. They want to say, well, with critical race theory, let me go back to that for a minute. The whole theory of critical race theory, as they try to say, is that America, from the day that it was founded on racism. And because of that, the whole institution that was built in America was built on racism. So the whole institution is racism. So we need to destroy the whole thing and start over. You probably heard the saying too, better the devil you know than the one you don't know. So now there's a book written, a movie, a story, documentary written by Nicole Hannah-Jones. And she calls it the 1619 Project. And from 1619, when America was founded, it was founded on racism. So again, people doing their homework, and even some cases just using common knowledge and common sense. America was not a country in 1619. Another myth that she throws out there is that the Civil War was fought because America wanted to hold on to their slaves, and that's why they went to war with Great Britain or Europe or England, whichever one you want to call it, to hold on to their slaves. That's what 1619 teaches. Again, it's false. It's a myth. Because in 1619, America didn't even exist as a country. 1619, America was made up of 13 colonies in 1619. And so a colony, by definition, is a territory that's governed or ruled by a king or a kingdom. And so in 1619, slavery was imported from England, while people were saying they want to fight against England to keep their slaves. Slavery was alive and well in England in 1619. They imported it to the 13 colonies. Because the 13 colonies was under the British rule, it was under the king at that time, and he imported slavery. So all the colonies was under the kingdom. The colonies at one point rose up to fight back to get free and get their own independence from England at that time. And that's what, not the Civil War, excuse me, the Revolutionary War, the first war, the Revolutionary War was fought over independence. It had nothing to do with fighting to maintain slaves because the slaves came from Europe in the first place. That's another myth that's told by Nicole Hannah-Jones, but most people don't know and not going to take the time to research it to find out if it's accurate or not. Here's another dangerous thing about Nicole Hannah-Jones. They look at the fact that she's a black female and people want to rally around her because of that. Now, I love black women as much as anybody. My wife, my mother, my sister, my in-laws, all of them are black women. So I'm not hating on black women. I celebrate them as much as anything. But I celebrate the truth even more. So Nicole Hannah-Jones is an African-American woman. That's true. She's a professor at the University of Harvard, and that's where she wrote the 1619 Project. But the thing you don't know about Nicole Hannah-Jones is she's a Marxist. Nicole Hannah-Jones is a Marxist. So you can't just look at the gender and the color. You got to look at what they believe, what they're about. And my thing is, I've been taught, and all of my training is, if you're trying to figure anything about anybody or any situation or any problem, you always go to the root. You go to the origin. You go to the beginning. You go to the genesis. See, looking at a woman as a female in black is symbolism without substance. We got to look at the substance. We have to look at the fruit. We have to look at where these individuals come from. And if you look at most of the women that's out front and being promoted in the leftist, liberal, socialist, Marxist, Democratic Party of black women, yes, but they're Marxists. It's not the everyday woman. It's not women like the average person that's going to be looking at this. And that's done intentionally too. That's not an accident. See, we look at their gender and their color, but you don't have any idea what these people really stand for and what they're really about. And I'll say it again. Nicole Hannah-Jones is a Marxist. She don't even believe in God in the first place. So why anybody would want to follow her, I have no idea. And so, again, the historical reference yes, the reference shows is that 1619, America was not a country. It was made up of 13 colonies. And the colonies at some point, just as we were taught in school, some of it is accurate, some of it, you have to take with a grain of salt too, that it was fought over taxation with no representation and dealt with also the church. The church in England had been taken over by the state of England. So the church that was in England now ran by the government. So when the people came here, they wanted to get out from under church authority and wanted the church to be totally separate from the church. Hence the thought separation of church and state, which was written by the Danbury Baptist to Thomas Jefferson. The year I can't get exactly right, so I'm not going to try to quote it. But the letter was written to Thomas Jefferson saying, we're starting to see in America what happened in English, that once again, the state is trying to encroach on the rights of the church. And so it wasn't for the church the church could be everywhere, anywhere it chose to be. And they didn't want to be under the guise of the control of the church like they were when they fled from Europe, from England, from Great Britain. And so when that was established, as they saw that, the Danbury Baptist Church wrote to President Thomas Jefferson and letting him know of their concern. So it was written in the Constitution that the state should make no law either promoting or denying religion. Religion is supposed to be free to do whatever it wants to. In fact, back in the beginning, the church had church in the Capitol building, ran by the United States government. Thomas Jefferson took money out of the government's treasure and gave it to the church. That's how it started. That was the inception of it. So the church was free to operate any way that they want to. Moving on. So now, again, America was not a country in 1619. It was made up of 13 colonies. America became a country in 1776. Every year, including this past year, we celebrate what we call the 4th of July. That was just the date. It's actually Independence Day, the day that America became independent from Europe and the King of England and became its own nation. So for Hannah Cole Jones, Hannah Nicole Jones saying America was a nation in 1619 is just accurate. It's wrong. It's totally inaccurate. America didn't become a country to another 157 years later. That's 1776. And so understanding the nature and the times, that was the culture. And I don't like it and agree with it with anyone else. But from the time America became a country in 1776, which was less than 100 years later, 1865, that's 94, 95, somewhere near years, that the Civil War now is fought after the Revolutionary War, and the Civil War was fought over the issue of slavery. The Democratic Party, Republican Party was one party. It was called the Democratic Republican Party. It was one party, and the party split over the issue of slavery. And so that was when America became a nation. And so going further, yeah, there was still segregation. We had to live through that, through the Jim Crow South back in the 90s and all of that. And when Martin Luther King came in the 60s and he stood up to fight against that for voting rights, freedom of assembly, a right to work and be into the public space and the public square. The whole purpose for Jim Crow was to keep us as close to being slaves as possible. Jim Crow still did not recognize us as American citizens. And so they denied us the right to vote. They didn't want us to go to school with their kids. We couldn't go out and eat at the lunch counters where they ate. So they had us totally segregated again, as if we were put back into slavery. And those were the things that Martin Luther King spoke against and gave his life for, because of institutional racism. Because when those things were the Jim Crow laws, so Jim Crow laws was the law of the land. It was the law of the nation. And he spoke against those things. And all of them were removed as a result of that. When Lyndon Johnson signed the 1964 Voting Rights Act, giving us the right to vote and all the other rights as well. And so the institutional racism, which Nicole Hannah Jones tried to point out again, that America's institutionally racist, is once again totally inaccurate. Those were the things that were removed from at the Jim Crow laws when that bill was put into law. And so I'm saying all of that to say that they're trying to create a race war. They want to create a race war. The Marxists, the leftists. See, the Democratic Party, which I used to be a member of as well for 40 years of my life, nobody never asked or get the revelation, well, why did you stop being a Democrat? All they look at is you're not that anymore, and they kind of look at you as being suspect. No, it's because I know something that you don't know, and most people don't know, that the Democratic Party is the one that created slavery in the first place. It was created by the Democratic Party. Jim Crow laws was created by the Democratic Party. All the things that oppressed black people was done by the Democratic Party. They didn't want us to have gun rights. They didn't want us to vote. They didn't want us to be able to go to school. Every time a bill came up before them, they were the ones to reject it. All the way up to 1964, and Lyndon Johnson was against it also until he got a clever idea that, okay, the time is coming that we're going to have to let them vote. We can't suppress them anymore. But now we're going to let them vote, but we're going to make sure that they vote for us. And the famous phrase he used, we're going to have them N-words voting for us for the next 200 years. But all the time up to then, they didn't want to let you vote at all. And now they're triggering us, and they're doing things to make sure that if we vote for them. And so all of that came out of there. So like I said, the historical record and the historical narrative rejects everything that Hannah Nicole Jones wrote about 1619 Project. So again, they're trying to create a race war. And we have to be wise enough to know that If it's not our fight, we don't have nothing to do with it. You have one side calling the other side racist. And the funny thing about it is both of the people calling each other racist, they're all white people. It's not black people calling them racist. It's one white liberal calling one right Republican a racist. Black people ain't in that fight, and we don't need to be in that fight. That's not our fight. If that's what they want to do to each other, let them do it. Which is why I'm saying we need to be independent. We need to be in the center. We need to be in the middle. And if that's the way that they choose to attack and treat each other, let them do it. But we don't need to be involved. It's not our fight. So attached to the other issue, talking about abortion. So the critical race theory, again, is basically saying that it's a part of white people's DNA. From the time they're born, you're born racist, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And because the system is institutionally racist, we have to destroy it and put something else in its place. A Marxist socialist system. People living in China, in Russia, in North Korea. People have no power, no say about anything. The elites live high above the people, and the people suffer and they struggle because all the resources have been taken for the elites and the government, and the people only have what they decide that you can have. Not a system I want to live under. So the other issue being abortion. So again, all the catchphrases are out there because we're being triggered once again. So you hear things like, oh, it's a woman's right to choose. My body, my choice. Women's reproductive rights. Pro-abortion. Pro-life. All of those things. So just getting right down to the bad brass taxes. And like I said, you have all these trigger words and code words. Abortion in its simplest form is murder. Period. It's the same scenario they used about a pig. They say you can put makeup and lipstick and a dress on a pig. If it sees a mud puddle, it's going to jump in the mud puddle. Why? Because it's a pig. That's his nature. And that's what he's going to do. And nobody can change his nature. And so abortion is simply murder. It talks about a fetus. Is it a human being or is it not a human being? My reference for that is going back to the book of Jeremiah, when God said, before I ever formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. So God knew from the very beginning. He knew who Jeremiah was. God cares about the born and the unborn. Both. They're human beings in God's eyes. Some people saying, well, it's not a human being. It's just a blob of flesh. But from the time a person a woman has been said that you're pregnant, they can detect a heartbeat. It's a human life inside of there. It's not just a clump of flesh. That's what people say to ease people's conscience who wants to abort or get rid of a child. And so then it comes down to the issue reproductive rights. Now, reproductive rights is dealing with birth. They don't deal with anything else. The only reproductive right is when you got a right to have a baby. It doesn't have reproductive rights, don't have anything to do with abortion because you're not reproducing or producing anything. So you got all these silly catchphrases out there. Well, I believe in women's reproductive rights. I believe in women's reproductive rights also. They have a right to have a baby. Well, it's my body, my choice. You look at it that way, okay? Even that, if you believe that, which I don't. Even if you believe that, if it's your choice, abortion is murder. So you have a choice to kill a baby. Okay, that's your choice. And it goes on from there. Except in the case of rape and incest. That one is a little more stickier and a little tougher because that happened, but that happens maybe 1% of the time. So they want to go to the extreme example and to really get to the bottom of what really happens most of the time. People go out and hook up and have these booty calls and meet in the bar and get drunk and go home with somebody that you don't even know, and you wake up the next morning and find out that you're pregnant. Now you don't want to have the baby. Now it's sin, and that's the root. Like I said, you're trying to serve something You got to go to the root. It's sin. Because you tell me this, how many married couples do you know have abortions? How many married families abort a child, which is God's order and the way it was set up to be from the very beginning? Married people don't abort babies. In fact, if a wife is pregnant and they go to the doctor and he said there may be some health risk to the mother because of whatever the reason may be, and they allow the mother to make that decision. Now, and I'm speculating here for the first time. Now, that's between that mother, the husband, the doctor, and God, because it is a risky thing for you to give your own life for another life. But in most cases that is said, I don't know about presently, but before in the context of marriage is what God's talking about, not boyfriend, girlfriend, hooking up, all that silliness. The decision the mother will make, where if my child live and I die, so be it. I'm giving life. I've lived my life, and I'm not going to take another innocent life. And who speaks for the unborn while everybody picketing and protesting and doing all those things? Who speaks for the child who, number one, didn't ask to come here in the first place? Number two, cannot speak for itself. And because now you figured I'm too young, or this is going to affect your career, affect the rest of your life, and you got to make a tough life decision that now I want to get rid of this child so I can go on and live my life. But it's in most cases, it's your fault that the child is here in the first place. Nobody ever talks about that. They dance around that issue. And so that's how that works. And then here's another thing, the trick that they use. My body, my choice. So it's make it a completely a women's issue, like the men don't play a role in abortion. The men play a huge role in abortion. And the fact that, just like I said, if two people, even whether they're dating, just met or whatever, and you wind up getting pregnant, and the man come off and say something like, well, that's not mine. That ain't mine. I don't know who that is. You could be with anybody. I don't know. And I've seen this happen. Again, this is not speculation. It's something I've experienced and I've lived through. And so he said, well, I'm not going to raise this baby by myself. I'm going to get rid of it. And so the man rejects the woman and the woman rejects the child. On the other hand, if that man say, okay, well, I wasn't quite ready to be no father yet, but if you want to do it, we can raise this child. I'll be right there with you. I'll support you through every step of the process. I'll be at all the appointments. I'll be there to help you in anything you need with raising this child. 99% of the time, the woman will say, okay, I'm going to keep this child. So for people to come up with that goofy statement of my body, my choice, is just not accurate either. And I say this, that you can say it's my body, my choice. The day a woman can get pregnant without a man, then it's your choice. It's just as much the man's decision as it is yours. You're just the womb, the matrix, the delivery system for the child, which is important, and it's a vital role that you play. But you don't have total say over that child. You have 50%. I'll even go farther to give you 51%, and the man has the other 49. That's his child too. It ain't just your child. And so when people say foolish things like, my body, my choice, I reject that thinking completely, because you didn't get pregnant by yourself. When you get pregnant by yourself, you can do whatever you want to do. And so both of these things are things to destroy the black race, the black population, but they don't ever tell you that. Going back to Margaret Sanger in the 1960s, when abortion first came on the scene, she come up with the idea of not only abortion, but contraceptives. Conversation I used to have with my mother when I was younger, and my mother was still here, who's gone home to be with the Lord. And we talked about that. And so I was raised in the era of the big family. There was nothing for you to see a family with 12 kids, 14 kids, 16 kids, 18 kids. I remember one family, I think if I'm quoting it right, the Jenkins family that I grew up, they had 19 or 20 kids. And this is back in the 60s coming through there. So now you look at the narrative of the Caucasian family during that time. Their ideal reality of the American was 2.5 children, a house with a white picket fence. That was their belief. And so they got 2.5 children, and you look around you, these family got 16 kids. You got 20 kids. You got 15 kids. It was 6 of us in our family, 8, including my mother and father, and we were considered a small family. Nowadays, 6 children, family of 8 is considered a large family. But the same thing. So these people look like that. And it wasn't just her, but she was the one carried it out. It was conversations going along all the time. It reminds me of the story of the children in Egypt after Joseph had died, when he came there and he brought his family there during the famine, and they stayed there. And so as they stayed in that city, they began to multiply. And the Bible says that then came a Pharaoh that didn't know Joseph. And they say the Hebrew women were thrifty. They were fertile. They were multiplying. And the Pharaoh and some of his people said, if we don't do something to oppress these people, they're going to outnumber us. And then when our enemy comes to rise up against us, they're going to rise up and help our enemy. So out of that, that fear that was upon them, they, at that point, began to oppress and suppress the Hebrew children and put them into slavery. And as we know, after it ended, it went home for 440 years. So that's the viewpoint that was looked at with abortion. If we don't do something, we having 2.5 kids. They got 16 kids. They got 20 kids. They got 14 kids. It's just a matter of time, if this continues to go on, that they're going to outnumber us. And so in order for them to hold on to power, in order for them to hold on to money, in order for them to hold on to resources, and they were saying, well, we have to do something to slow down eugenics and get rid of some of these black people, or they're going to overtake us. They're going to overpopulate us, and which is the whole reason abortion came into existence in the first place. Because back in the 70s and the 60s, it wasn't like it was now. America was mainly black and white. There wasn't a big Hispanic population or any other population during that time. It was whites and blacks, and that was it. And so, as I said, they come out with birth control, stop you from getting pregnant in the first place. They come out with prophylactics that you can use again, which will stop you from having babies. And if those two things weren't successful, they would sterilize you, to make sure once they sterilize you, you can never have kids again. And then if you didn't do any of one of those 3, now comes abortion. Now you're pregnant. So that's 4 different avenues that they did everything they could to stop and exterminate the African American population, starting back into the 60s up to present day, 60 some odd years later. There's no one can give an accurate account, but the most accurate estimate is from that time when abortion was legalized and became the law of the land in 1973, 74, 50 years of that. There's been 19 million African American babies that have been aborted. That's the next generation. We always talk about the next generation in school. We just sit up here and abort it. The next generation. 40% of all the abortions in the United States of America is African American babies. So you got all these women livers that come out of the 70s during the same time that abortion came out. And most of them are Caucasian women. They're out there picketing, protesting, and screaming and crying and fussing and doing all this stuff. But it ain't their babies that's dying. It's us. Again, that was just a trigger point. And then we start hearing them say that, yeah, I agree with that. Oh, you agree with killing your babies? You agree with killing the next generation, your kids, your grandkids? That's foolishness. But we come into agreement with that stuff. That's why I said we're triggered into that. And the whole abortion scheme in the first place was to exterminate the African American population. And so they couldn't do it. Slavery couldn't do it. But here's the trick of the whole thing, that once you come into agreement with anything, now you can be successfully exterminated. So right now, I forget the exact number before I came on board, but I'm going to take a shot at it anyway. So this says that basically 1.86 of the African American population die off every year due to sickness, illness, old age, natural causes, or whatever. 1.86. Now the number of babies that's being born And this is per million. That may sound like a small amount, but you take 1.8 million times 35 million, then you'll see how many kids that actually is. So the other part is 1.68. So 1.86 is dying, 1.68 is being born. So now, since we came into agreement with that spirit, for the first time in our history, the African American population now is in decline. Our numbers are declining because there's more people dying than there is babies being born. And we're still agreeing with that foolishness. It's a trick of the devil from the pits of hell. And it ain't no other way to look at it. Abortion is murder, and it was targeted mainly at us and for us. It didn't have anything to do with anybody else but us. During the same time when Adolf Hitler, who also believed as Margaret Sanger in building a superior white race, a super race. And we're going to get rid of all the infidels, all the sick, all the weak in order to create this super race. And that included getting rid of us. She called us human weeds. That was messing up the population of the precious flowers in the garden, which was them. We were the weeds in the garden. So if you planting flowers and you got weed in there, you pluck the weed out so the flowers can flourish, so the flower can grow. We were the weeds that you were referring to. And so again, don't take my word for anything. Go study your own history. Study your own and come to your own conclusion. Just like I go over here on Central Avenue, they got the Sanger Branch Library. I researched that. The name of that library ought to be changed. If we're looking for something to rally against and protest against and fight against, you should be fighting against that. There's no way that a library in this city should be named after Margaret Sanger. No way possible. And so the history book that I read, it said it was named after her husband, but it doesn't matter. He was married to her. He was a part of the same ideology as she was. So it don't matter if it was her husband or if it was Margaret Sanger herself. That library ought to be changed to anything other than Sanger. We should not be promoting somebody that promotes killing babies. So as I said before, this book, Erased, and he uses erased with a C instead of an S, because he ain't talking about eraser like you're erasing chalk off a chalkboard. He's talking about erase as in erasing a race of people. And that's what's behind abortion. So also to critical race theory or black history of what's going on in the school systems now that they have attached to black history. It was all in the news down in the state of Florida. I don't know all the details, and they were talking about not wanting to teach black history and so on and so forth. So now in the public school system, they want to teach black history, and to it, they want to attach. So black history, they want to attach to it what's called queer theory. Queer theory. Probably never heard that term before. It's another lesbian homosexual term. See, people call them gays and lesbians. I don't call them gays and lesbians. I go back to the original belief. They're homosexuals, same-sex attraction, homo, meaning alike. Men liking men, women liking women. And so again, it's a lie from the pit of hell because two men can't make a baby and neither can two women make a baby. So everything is trying to depopulate the planet. That's why it's been pushed and made to seem normal. It ain't normal, it's abnormal. It's anything but normal. And people won't stand up and speak the truth about things because they're worried about what people are going to say and about the pushback. You're homophobic, you're xenophobic, you're thisophobic. Well, they can call me whatever they want to call me. Because these same people are out, as I mentioned earlier, these same people are out to destroy the church in the first place. You're up here trying to pacify them and come into agreement with them, and their agenda is to destroy you. So it don't matter if you take a position or not, they're still coming after you. I choose to stand and take a position. I say what God says. I say what the Bible says. It's not a Democratic issue or a Republican issue for me. As I told you from the beginning, I'm just the referee. And when I see a foul or a penalty, I'm going to throw the flag. And the standard in everything to me is the word of God. What God says is what I says. And I don't compromise no matter what the outcome is. And that's the revelation that all of us need to come to. We got believers coming into agreement with that same concept of right to choose and reproductive rights and my body, my choice and all that stuff. Abortion is murder. So if you want to come into agreement with the spirit of murder, then that's on you. The only thing I can say to people, you better be careful about the positions that you take up and the things that you're indoctrinated to and the things that you are triggered by, because you may find up fighting on the wrong side of the fight. You may end up finding yourself fighting against God and the word of God. God has set the standard and he says what it is, and nobody else's opinion, feelings, thoughts matter. God is the standard. He's the measure. Everything. And so that's the way we should look at everything in this world. What God says about it and what the world says about it. We're quickly coming to a culture class. You have the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness. And though light do not mix with darkness. And so that's the whole thing about critical race theory and abortion. And all of it is the agenda to destroy the African American race. Coming down to the end. Issue 1. I definitely wanted to speak on issue 1. I try to, as much as possible, to share information with people about issue 1. People have their own thoughts about everything, and I understand that, and I respect that. The Bible also says that my people are destroyed because of the lack of knowledge. In this case, the lack of knowledge, it don't mean that you don't know. God will present something to you. God will send a man, a woman, a prophet, the word of God itself to a person, and they reject it, just like they did in the Bible. The prophet came to people all the time, and they rejected the word of God. Even going with King Saul, the first king of Israel. The people, all the other countries around them had kings that led them into battle. Israel didn't have a king. They had the King of Kings. They had Jesus Christ, the Lord himself, leading the people in battle. They said, we want a king to lead us into battle, just like everyone else. And they told that to Samuel, the prophet, the man of God. And Samuel became upset with them. And he went and talked to God and he told him what the people were saying. And he was upset. And God said, Samuel, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting me. But you go back and you tell them what kind of man that king is going to be. He's going to enslave their children. He's going to take their resources. He's going to put heavy burdens and yokes on their neck to cause them to do things that they didn't have to do because they want to reject me. And Samuel went back and he told them what God had said. And their word was, we don't care. We want the king anyway. So God said, okay, give it to him. Give it to them. So here comes King Saul, the first king of Israel, since they rejected the King of Kings and Lords of Lords. And I say that story to say the same thing. We ought to be careful and tread lightly on taking up positions without doing research. The word of God should be the standard, especially for every believer. It doesn't matter which denomination you come from. It doesn't matter which color you are. God is the standard. God says, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word will remain. When there's nothing else that will exist and nothing else can stand, the word of God is going to stand. And so that's why I wanted to have that brief conversation. So again, back to issue 1. People are going around and saying things like they're going to take your voice. They're trying to silence your voice. They're trying to do this and the other. And if you really stop and do a quick research, you'll see that our voices have already been silenced. What do you think cancel culture is all about? Silencing people. All the stuff they're teaching in the school to our kids, sexual reassignment, all those things. They're doing all that stuff. And now they're trying to pass laws to say if you come to school today and you feel like a girl, you can be transitioned today, and we don't even have to tell your parents. The resources is there for you to do that, and you don't even need your parents' permissions no more. So who's being silenced? Who's really being silenced? It's already there. But then the same people that are silencing you are turning right back around and telling you that they want to take your voice. They want to silence your voice. They want to take your power. They're already taking your power. I was looking at this phrase before and I tried to research it. It was called the syndrome, but it wasn't accurate. So I'll take the Munchausen syndrome off the table. And what it was, you have a group or individuals, they create a crisis, they create a problem, and then call themselves trying to solve that problem. Coronavirus, the worldwide pandemic, was created. It wasn't an accident. It was created, and it killed millions of people. Now, the same people that create the crisis want to turn around and say we have the solution to the problem. And people start celebrating them, not realizing they're the ones who created the problem in the first place. So back to issue one. They're telling you they're trying to silence you. One man, one vote. That's the way it's always been. That ain't nothing new. One man, one vote came out of the Constitution, the original document. And so all these things that they were saying, they were trying to say, issue one is not about abortion. And I was trying to the best of my ability to educate people and say, yes, it is. Issue one is about abortion. Because now that it passed, people, and as soon as it passed, the amazing thing is it went right away. You didn't hear much fanfare, much talk about it or nothing after it passed. But it's because issue one wasn't the real agenda in the first place. So right now, issue one is passed in August. Now on the November ballot coming up, abortion is on the ballot. They want to legalize abortion in the state of Ohio. They want to legalize murder in the state of Ohio. When the Supreme Court last year overturned Roe versus Wade, some people are good at messaging, or messaging is misdirecting and telling half-truths and whole lies. They're saying that now abortion is no longer legal. You can't have it. What Roe versus Wade was overturned last year, it took the federal government out of the abortion business, which they never should have been in it in the first place. Some people say, well, that's been the law for 50 years. But if something wrong from the beginning, it's wrong 50 years later, it's wrong 100 years later, it's wrong 1,000 years later. It don't matter how long it's existed. If it was done wrong in the beginning, it's still wrong to this day. And so when the makeup of the court changed and the people now saying that the federal government should never been in the abortion business in the first place, and we're overturning it. Now, when they're overturning it, they sent it back to the states. All 50 states now have to make their own decision whether they want to legalize abortion in their state. When the federal government did it, it made abortion legal over the whole country, and they did not have a right to do that. And the Supreme Court was right to overturn it. So now that's why I said people need to do their research and stop being triggered and stop believing everything someone tell you. So now, 2 months ago, abortion was legalized in the state of Michigan because it's going from state to state to state. So Michigan legalized abortion. So even if people in Ohio want to have abortion now, and right now it's not the law in Ohio. So they'll be crossing the border going to Michigan to get an abortion because they legalized it in abortion. So now in November is coming to Ohio, which is what was behind issue one all along, as I tried to explain that to people, and they didn't want to listen to me like I didn't know what I was talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. So now it's on the November ballot, and they probably won't put it on there saying we want to legalize abortion. They always use quick, slick, flowery words. So again, women's reproductive health. I was at a store shopping earlier this summer, and a guy was standing in the parking lot with a clipboard. So you have to have so many signatures you have to get in order to get an issue put on the ballot. And so they were saying the same thing. Well, they're making it difficult for you to put another issue on the ballot. Well, they got abortion on the ballot for November. They're saying that you couldn't do it. They did do it because it's on the ballot. So these people lie to you, and because people don't know, they believe anything someone tell them because they don't do their own research. And as I said before, when somebody come to you with research that contradicts what they say, you want to reject it. Just like I said before, my people are destroyed because of lack of knowledge, not because you didn't know. It's because somebody told you and you rejected it. And that's why our people are being destroyed. And so they said it wasn't about abortion. It is about abortion. Because now it's on the November ballot, but it comes legal in Ohio. But they're not going to say abortion. They're going to say protect women's reproductive rights. They're going to say it's a woman's right to choose. They're going to say all of those things. They're not going to say abortion, because abortion is murder. And I don't think most people, any reasonable person, would not vote to support that. But when you put it across as women's reproductive rights, women's reproductive health, women's my body, my choice, yeah, people are going to jump on the bandwagon for that. All those clever, flowery, slick sayings. But just be reminded, at the end of the day, abortion is murder. So these people that were going around, the United Black Coalition, they call themselves, they're all over the place, pushing hard for issue one. Everywhere you get, you see the signs. And so I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, who are these people? Where did they come from? Where did they get their funding from? Because they got vans and T-shirts and going out doing public events and all type of stuff. Seemed like they popped up out of nowhere. And they're going all over, once again, miseducating, triggering the African American community. They wasn't in a whole lot of other communities. They were in our communities. And I sat and I listened to these people talk, and I'm like, no, they're not telling the truth. It sounds good, but it ain't true. And so I'm wondering, where do these coalitions, where are these people coming up from? I got stuff in the mail with a Texas address on it. Now, why would somebody in Texas be concerned about what's going on in Ohio? On the day when they were voting, I'm almost done. On the day that they were voting, a guy that stays close to where these people's organization is, on the corner of Dorr Street, right across the street from the University of Toledo, they were rallying in the parking lot. And they had people from Florida. Now you got people from Florida. You got people from Texas. Why are you concerned about what's going on in Ohio? So it's called dark money. Money is coming in from outside of the state of Ohio to push through, to put all the commercials on TV, put all the information out, the T-shirts, the signs, the correspondence, everything supporting it. And all that stuff costs money. Where did the money come from? It's called dark money, and it didn't come from Ohio. It came from out of the state of Ohio, from this individual right here, which most of you probably never heard of before. His name is George Soros. He's 92 years old. He's a Hungarian Jew. He's half Hungarian and he's half Jewish. He come out of the Nazi Holocaust. His family escaped the Nazi Holocaust. He was at one point alleged to be worth $85 billion. So again, researching, going to the beginning. Okay, where did you get that money from? And so the story says, this book says he got his money from going to the Nazi Germans and turning it in his own people. He told the Nazis where to find the Jews that they took to the extermination camps and exterminated 6 million Jews. He was a traitor to his own people. And they paid him for doing that evil deed. So it's that money. He has an organization called the Open Society, which he don't believe in borders. He don't believe in that stuff. That's why all these immigrants are coming into the country illegally. There's nothing wrong with immigration as long as it's legal. They're letting all kind of people, they're letting terrorists into the country. They're letting all type of army age individuals coming into these countries. These people are posting up for a war inside of America, and we're asleep. We're clueless to the fact that these people are here to destroy us. And he's the money behind all of it. He's the money behind the Black United people that were here pushing for issue one, because the Open Society, he creates all these organizations. He funds all these organizations. The United Black Coalition, Black Lives Matter, the organization, not the movement. You got the movement, which was a demonstration over the killing of George Floyd, which I supported. And then here come these Marxists, because they're Marxists too. Then you come with Black Lives Matter, the organization headed by Patrice Cullor, however she spells her name, 2 lesbian women. And so when they first came out, had their platform, they scrubbed it since its first inception. When they first came out, it had on there, it had 2 women and a baby. And I said, okay, where's the man? Where's the husband? So they call in the family 2 women and an adopted child, because one thing for sure, they didn't have no child. And so they don't care for men. They deplore men. They hate men because they're lesbians. They're homosexuals. That was on their original website. Now they've taken that down and put something else on there. So again, we're coming in the middle and supporting things we know nothing about. And this man was behind that organization. He funds all these organizations. He believed that America needed to be fundamentally changed. He believes in critical race theory. And he had $85 billion. He spent billions of dollars to overthrow this country. So I guarantee you, most of the people probably never heard of this man. George Soros, he's 92 years old. He's turned over his company now to his son, Aaron Soros, who's keeping up the fight for his daddy. So I just wanted to let you all know that what I know about this stuff, and don't take my word for any of it. Do your own research. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.